wisdom. The intent of this lecture series is to analyze paradigms of development and explore findings on environment, sustainability, and social justice. I'm excited to have K.B. Jinan on tuning in today, a leading alternative thinker, educationalist, researcher, designer, and an inspiring anarchist of the deschooling movement. Jinan has spent 40 years living with learning communities of artisans and is relentless in his search for the process that enables knowledge creation. He believes that the modern educational paradigm is based on how to teach and not how we naturally learn. He has researched and systematically documented children's unstructured play to decode how children simplify the complex world they experience in order to make sense of it. With over 4,000 videos and images of various activities that children undertake, he convincingly presents proof. He also posits that creativity is an afterthought in the current teaching paradigm at schools, whereas it is the first principle in a learning paradigm when children engage in an unstructured play, because learning means to uncover the unknown. Jinan has been concerned with the homogenization and westernization of aesthetic sensibilities. He has dedicated 20 years to studying aesthetic sensibilities, how aesthetic sensibilities are formed in traditional cultures, and how modern education distorts these sensibilities. This led him to initiate a conference series to address the fragmented aesthetic sensibilities in modern man. Welcome, Jinan. Delighted to have you here on Tuning In. You have to unmute yourself, Jinan.
All right, yeah. Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for this invitation. So I will start with a PowerPoint presentation that may be easier. So, with that I will, engage with the participants, and I'm hoping that we can do at least part of it in a slightly process-oriented way, whatever online allows. Process-oriented, whatever online allows, So a little bit of time and, for people to hold certain thoughts, So I would actually, do a bit of a slow process in the beginning and then show my presentation. And so let me share the presentation and then start the conversation. So one thing I want to quickly tell, Nayantara, if there is any problem in hearing, meaning I sometimes there's a lot of rain here and sometimes the, the power might go off. So if there is any fluctuation like that, just give me a call. If I'm not able to, if I'm not audible to you or something like that, which means the internet has created some problems. So please inform me at that point. Just give me a call. So now I will assume that you are hearing and I will continue the work. So we would actually look at this whole, the thing that how we build creativity, children's creativity, in terms of what is creativity and what is a child. And I would like to go do it in a slightly exploratory process in the initial stages, just to give you a little bit time to kind of hold certain thoughts, And so I want to ask you one question, that whoever that has children at home, how many times have you told no to a child today? Just recollect those instances, and just, just think about it. Was it really absolutely necessary, or is it a habit, or is it for very small things that you keep telling no to a child? And let's also look at what are we actually, what was our childhood like? Did we have a very similar childhood like that the child has now, or we had a childhood which has more freedom? Were we more independent? And also let's look at what have we become, because having gone through schooling, I'm sure most of you have gone through schooling. So what has happened in that process, in the context of modern spaces? So two kinds of comparison we can do. One is that we compare ourselves with our parents, the kind of life they had and the kind of attitude they had, and what are we now, the kind of attitude we have now. And also recollect your own childhood and the childhood that we are providing children right now. So look at these different comparisons. And so have you become a teacher, or are you still a parent? What I'm asking is that compare with your parent. Were they teachers like you? What I mean is that, were your parents being so instructive? Were they teaching all the time? Or you had a bit more breathing space? Instructing, commanding, interfering. Is that the way that is happening with you now? Then other thing is that you feel insecure. And are you competitive? Do you fear future? And of course, this everybody is, but are you over concerned about money? And about food. Do you feed your child? Till what age did you feed your child? And do you think you overfed, or do you think it's okay? How much over you fed was fine? Are you possessive? And are you stressed out? Then one question I want to ask you, and hold this answer with you, and maybe towards the end we will come back to that. And this is to ask you, what is the color of sky? Hold this question. And then let's now look at what is creativity. Have you been creative? Can you recollect instances, or do you think that you were creative? Have you seen your child being creative? And do you think you have been more creative in your childhood than the children of today? And did you have toys? How many did you have? Compare that with the toys that you give your children today. And what was your play like? Was it the same environment? Did you have more spaces? More importantly, did you make any toy? That in your play, did you make any toy? Do you actually think children need toys? So this is a book kept upside down. How many of you have made something like this? How many of you have actually played house like this? Just keeping a bedsheet over a table and played? And what about this? Various instances that you experience at home, maybe marriage, maybe the doctor coming, or, various things that the child experiences. Then, have you made your house like this? Or with anything that is available, maybe the pillow, the chair? Do you recollect making a house like this? Have you fed your mother? Does your mother feed you now? Is it still happening? At what age this stops? What about this? Do you remember doing this kind of thing? Playing school, be a teacher, as a student, or as a librarian? How often have you done this? These questions are being asked because this is something that almost everybody does. You know, the reenacting the role of a teacher, reenacting the role of a mother. Everybody does it. Why is that everybody doing it? So now let's explore how we actually kill creativity. And I'm actually going to take you through a very different kind of exploration, which probably you are not used to, primarily because the paradigm that I'm talking about is very, very different. You know, so you will have to be kind of hold your doubts, hold your argumentative mind, etc., and just allow me to speak to you, and please don't try to create a barrier in listening. It's very important to listen, because what I am telling you is something, it's not a theory at all. These are things that I've observed what children do naturally, and then that is what I want to share with you. For almost 35 years, I have been observing children, documenting them, documenting and observing what they're doing on their own, not as a result of what we tell them to do, but what they spontaneously do. And it is from these studies that I have understood that there is a completely different something that we have missed out in the modern paradigm. So let's, you know, please be patient to look at that. So, so I would actually like to look at learning in a slightly different way. So I call learning as forming. What you saw, the child behaving like a mother and the child behaving like a teacher, etc., are a result of learning, which means learning is forming. In the sense, you are shaped, your attitudes, your everything is shaped by the experiences that you have. And other way I'm looking at learning is that learning as creation of knowledge. So this is very crucial to understand, because we are only used to understanding learning as analysis of somebody's information. This is what our normal notion. That is why we send our children to school. In school, they will give you knowledge which we analyze. We have never come across learning as a process that leads to creation of knowledge. So this is very important to understand, because we need to relook at how do we provide our home environment and school environment for children as a space for creation of environment and the creation of a being which is more intelligent, more creative, you know. So this is what we need to understand. And what I'm actually going to share with you is actually how children develop tools, qualities, abilities, and skills for knowing and being. This is very important to understand. And in this process, you also will have to reclaim some of these things that you have lost in the process of getting schooled. Because you have also spent years and years in these schools where your job was only to analyze somebody's information. So naturally, the habit that you've acquired, that you've formed, and the attitudes, everything is as a result of schooling and not your natural, you know, tendencies. So I would like to share a small, you know, story. And that story is this frog meeting a centipede, and was surprised to see a centipede with 100 feet walking with no doubt any time to which leg to put, you know. So the frog asked the centipede that, how do you know which leg to put first? So that gave Centipede a little doubt. It stood for a while and began to think, how is he doing it and which leg should be put first, And that actually killed the ability of the centipede to walk spontaneously. Now, this is actually the story of all of us. Because learning was as natural as, as breathing, as digesting food and everything that we do. But we began to doubt this process, and we went through a certain processes which totally doubted our own ability to create knowledge. So this, what I'm going to share with you is that, and so of course there are three aspects to learning, which is why we learn, what we learn, and how we learn. So I've written children, but it's basically about, let's look at it both from children's point of view and our point of view, because we have also gone through the childhood. And why we learn is fundamentally because learning is the process of life. You see, it is to sustain life that learning happens actually. And what we learn, what children learn, and how children learn. So these are the other areas that I want to cover. And children learn the world the way they experience it. That is why the image that you saw of a child feeding a mother is because the child has reenacted that experience to make sense of it. So what they do is they immerse, observe, immerse, imbibe, absorb. So, which is naturally, there is nothing that you have to do about it, because the child is born with these abilities to imbibe and learn what is happening in its context. And what children do is, in order to make sense of the world, children playfully recreate experiences. That is why the child played like a teacher. And for years, for at least for 2 years at least, the child would recreate the experience of a teacher. And of course, the play keeps changing with each passing year, because it is also growing, and because also it's experiencing something new. And they make use of props, which is what is called toys. I will go into it much more in detail on what is toy and what is play and all that, because this is where the total confusion lies actually. So what children learn is that the children learn the various attributes of the world, whatever the child is experiencing. And it learns the form, function, process, material, structure, relationship, context. Actually, this is what the world is all about. Of course, you will get understand this more clearer as I show you the presentation. Don't try to understand it right away, but it suffices to say that every object has a form, it has a function, there is a process that involved and is made with materials, and it takes a structural stability. And it is in relationship with each other, and there is a context to this. So another very important thing that we must understand is that in the how children learn, most important thing we must understand is that it learns autonomously, which means it doesn't need anybody to teach, because it's an internal process, it's not an external process. And they experience the whole, and then they begin to explore the parts, and a natural integration happens. Again, don't worry too much about trying to understand this. This will get cleared as we go along. Other thing that I want to talk to you is about these three facets of why, what, how, as three kinds of attentions actually. With any phenomena that we are encountering, we are encountering with these three questions subconsciously inbuilt into our system. This is what what we are engaging with, and these are recurring components of knowledge. Again, don't worry, this will get cleared as we go along. Now, there are two paradigms of learning. The paradigm that we are familiar with is called the literates learn the word, meaning like all of us, what we have learned is the word, the printed word, and this is one paradigm that we are familiar with. We are only familiar with this world. And the other world that I'm going to share with you is the illiterates world, in which they are learning the real world, and there is a different process to that. Now, I will go into the second one in detail, because that is what we are not familiar with. So as I'm sharing with you, you can do the comparison with the experience that we have gone through in learning the word. So the most important thing is that awakening of senses. And it's senses that connect the inner and the outer world. And this is also natural. We don't need Montessori method to do that, because senses are natural, like breathing is natural, smelling is natural, seeing is choiceless. So we don't have to do anything that Montessori suggests, because children are born with all the senses, and nature has given us the ability to observe and utilize it, provided we don't distract the child from real life. That, please keep that in mind. And observation is the most important, the beginning of all learning. The beginning of all learning is two things. One is that you are in the realm of unknown, and that unknown prompts you to start observing, start exploring. And unknown is the condition that schools takes away, because they already know what is to be taught to you. Now, please look at this video. Look at the child and look at the dog. The dog is not at all observing, whereas the child is constantly observing. See, it's observing how it is done. Unlike animals, human child has to observe very deeply to understand what is happening around. It will observe and then pick up. And then another very, very important activity that you should understand in the context of learning the real world is comparison, meaning how they understand the differences and similarities in each and every aspect of the real world. So again, I will share with you one video, and please look at the video of, look at the child in the front, looking at the feet, comparing the feet. So seeing the similarity and seeing the difference. Actually, this is the crux of all learning, actually. Take the blessing from the child. Thank you. Yeah. So the crux of learning is through this understanding of, similarity and differences. You can, of course, this is so automatic that you don't notice it. For example, we can take an example. Suppose first time you ate mango, and so of course you have, that taste has stayed in your memory. And second time when you eat mango, you find, this is mango. But you may also recollect that there's a slight difference because it's a different type of mango, or it is not ripe enough, or it is kacha. So there is some kind of assessment that happens both at every sensorial level. You will recognize, we'll take just the case of mango itself, through the color, through the shape, through the smell, not only the taste, through the tree. So all these things are basically giving you an information as to what type of mango that is and what is the stage it is. And actually farmers have even a better ability, that just by looking at the leaf or the tree, they would tell that it is which type of mango it is. Or if it is too similar, they will pick a leaf, crush it and smell it and tell this is that mango. So it is basically with this 5 senses that we actually engage with the world and make sense of it. So I would like to take you through certain redefinitions, because we need to redefine, because actually when we are entering into a new terrain, new paradigm, the old definitions don't work at all. Old definitions are valid only in your old paradigm. So let's look at some of the definitions absolutely new, some of the words absolutely new, with a new meaning to that. Now, creativity is the most abused word in the modern context. Creativity basically means, number one is that it is in the realm of unknown. Creativity happens and it awakens the creativity of the child. So this is a very, very important aspect to understand, because precisely this is what is denied in the modern context. The unknown is removed, and we assume that creativity is something that an artist does or some special person does. No, creativity is something life given, and every living being is creating knowledge of their context by engaging with the unknown. This is number, one very important thing to remember. Then we keep talking about this word curiosity. There should be curiosity, but frankly speaking, I have hardly met anybody that's really curious. But real curiosity is embedded in life, embedded in all living beings by life. It is something that life itself gives you. You don't have to have an extra curiosity for anything. If you leave children alone, they will naturally carry on, and they will start exploring, and this is what they do. And other important thing is about questioning and answering. We assume that questioning means it has to be in language. No. In case of a child, when the child is touching something, which actually means that it is responding to a question and it is trying to find an answer. So it happens in the realm of experience itself. And then other very important thing to understand is what is play. Now, what we have done is that playfulness is a quality that is embedded in the child. And so for every act of a child is play. For example, when a child is holding a child was eating coconut. He took a bite and immediately looked at it and told that it is like the Nandi bull. And then within a few seconds later, he compared that with a half moon. So this is playfulness. It is, again, you can again see that it is comparing something which is looking similar, So every time you will find this similarity being, continuously revisited. And so you can also understand that there is, that this is actually metaphor in action, in real experience. Because for us, metaphor is usually understood in terms of language, But this is actually metaphor in action without using the language. What is similar is being explored. Now, so play. Another definition is that play is the reenactment of experience. So what the child was doing when you saw the child teaching was a reenactment of an experience. When the child is feeding you, it's a reenactment of an experience. So it is actually, another interesting word to bring in the context is reflection. Reflection is actually play. A reenactment of experience is what is reflection. It is because what is reflection? Reflection is a way of revisiting our memory to understand it further. So this is exactly what a child is doing through its recreation of experiences, what we call as. And toy. Toy is another very important object, completely misunderstood and by the modern person, because toy is an object that is used as props in the process of reenactment of experience. And any object is fine. I'm sure most of you must have seen how a child uses their palm itself as a mobile phone. So a child doesn't require any toy at all, even any object at all. Just the body itself becomes the vehicle. Quite often you must have seen this, the body itself is used as a vehicle, or a chair becomes a chair, whatever the imagination at that point the child thinks. And other important thing is that the toy, usually the object resembles the original object. That is how it is. Some kind of similarity you will find either in its formation, or some similarity it will find, but it will be very wide similarity, because like this, in this case, the child is treating that wooden block as her child. This is the mother with the child. And the same wooden block, after some time, became the vehicle. It became the bus. Imagination is another totally, misunderstood idea, because for an educated person, imagination is imagination of imagination. Because to read means to imagine. What you're reading is you're only imagining all the time. You're never engaging with the real context. For a child, it is actually imagination of their real experience. And so what I meant for us is that it is imagination of imagination. And now in this case, again, look at this, just the stones have become their own child. So here, the actual child is being imagined using just a stone. So uh, the real damage is that when doll is given to a child instead of instead of a child creating this, because quite often young children don't even differentiate between real and unreal. So when you give a child a doll, it's assumed that it is another child or another, because I've personally seen it. When a child was given a dog, a big sized dog, stuff, some material it was made of, the child was scared first, and as it was touching, that sensation was also very disturbing for the child. So for a child, actually, it doesn't distinguish between, for you it's a doll, but not for a child. It takes time for it to understand your ideas, which actually means that we are actually misleading the child. Another very important thing is that actually toy is a process, part of a process. And after a point, the utility of the, that particular toy is finished and it no longer plays with that. But what is happening today is that, that I'm sure, many young people are still sleeping with their teddy bears or whatever they have been given in the, childhood. So this, this possessiveness and this emotional connect, I think it is quite harmful, because it's absolutely not necessary at all. Because the emotional connect has to be with people, not with an object, unnecessarily creating a confusion to a child, and then, so this is a very interesting kind of a, two combs are put together, and that is the aeroplane. And improvisation, this is another very important thing. For us, that is a box in which a truck toy is kept. But when the child got it, the child imagined that box as the garage itself. So the child was imagining that it is coming out of the garage. Immediately it made use of a situation. So this is what creativity is all about. So let me go slightly more deeply into the way that we damage children through introduction of teaching, and especially how language becomes the means to distort children's experience. So there are two types of languages. One is experiential language, and the other one is conceptual language. And in experiential language, the adult provide the word, children hear the sound, and meaning gets created in experience. What this means is that adults around are speaking to each other, and the child is listening to that, and in the context the child is able to understand. For example, you say, bring a glass of water. So then somebody comes in with a glass of water. The child is able to understand that that's a whole context. So from the context, the child is able to make, but the child actually hear that only a sound. Glass is a sound. Water is a sound. But from the context, the child is able to make sense. For example, you can, if you have been reading books, you will be able to understand that how do we actually give meanings to the words when we are reading a book. Because you don't look at each word and its meaning. So from the context, you are able to make out that, this word means this word means this, and because the situation is, is that you begin to understand, that you're familiar. So again, please understand that from this we are getting one rule, which I've told earlier, that children experience the whole and then decode the context. So the whole experience of the context is taken, and from that it is each fragment is being understood. So I will give you a good example of how children create language and how children create category. But this happens together. A child was familiar with crow and dog. Well, this is what the child has been seeing every, often. So the crow, the child used to call kaka, and the dog is kutta. And so the child's, created one category in which all the flying ones are kaka and all the walking ones are kutta. Walking means 4 legs. So what happened was that the child was standing on a balcony and saw the peacock coming, And so as it was flying, the child pointed and told, that is kaka, it's crow. And it's, got down and started walking. And the child told it is kuta. So the same thing became two categories when it was doing two functions. So this is a, very important thing to understand, how actually children use the senses, language, everything together to create category and understand the world. Another very important thing, the child had called Billy to a cat. When it encountered a tiger, started calling it Bada Mimi. Bada Mimi. So for the child, cat was Bada Mimi and dogs were Bada Cuckoo. Sorry. Cats was Mimi and dogs were Cuckoo. So tiger became Bada Mimi and lion became lion. Of course, was a little confusing for the child, because the face of the lion was like Bada Mimi and the body was like Bada Cuckoo. So so the child has a very, very clear autonomous internal way in which it makes sense of the world. And of course, you can also see that the categories are formed using various aspects of the form. It could be sound, it could be color, form, texture, size. Any of this is used in order to create the category. And slowly, as the child, experiences more and more, it begins to put everything into a certain proper kind of, categories. And hearing, smelling, touching, seeing, tasting. This is actually the input based on which the categories are formed. So language is not categorizing. Language is a tool for identification and for communication, not for creating category. This has to be very clearly understood. All categories are sensorial categories. Because see, a mango can be called amchi, mango, tango, any name you give, but the taste remains the same. So I will take you through this in a slightly more organized manner. Let me show you some examples of form, the way things look. So this was created by the child immediately after seeing me shooting. Here, the children have created their market by collecting various objects that look like various vegetables. So it could be aloo, potatoes, eggs, bangan, things like that. And you see this dry leaf hanging, which is actually like this one, the dry leaf hanging. This is dry fish. And you can see other very interesting thing I want to show you is that there is this violet flower here, and that was bangan, the eggplant. Houses. I think the best use of books for children is to create house or any other thing that they can make with it. So, and function is the making, the experiencing of the house, which means function of a house. How do you identify, what is the function? It is a space that is contained. So children would create this contained space and call it their house. So process is actually the process of making. It could be with pillow, it could be using it, various kinds of activities. But in this case, the making is given more importance. And structure is actually, understanding of structure happens because once they make it, it takes on a sturdy, it becomes sturdy, which also means that they have understood the structural aspect of it. Now, property meaning what the various possibilities of a material, that is what is called property. So when a child is sitting on a sofa and bouncing, it is understanding a certain property of that particular material. Now, this was in the railway station in which the child is sitting on a chair and sliding it. So it's making use of the possibility that actually exists. So I hope by now you would have got some idea as toy as the beginning. It's actually the destruction of creativity, imagination, improvisation, and actually the total natural process itself. Because what a toy does is that toy becomes, from a process, it becomes, it's used as a product. And when it becomes a product, it imposes play. Play is actually a process of learning. So from playfulness, it becomes play. From quality, it becomes an activity. From a temporary, time-bound, context-specific object into a permanent product. This is what a toy does. It freezes activity, and then, of course, you have a strange, emotional, unwanted connection with objects. And what a toy does is that play and playfulness as a total process, which is actually a cognitive process, becomes play as an activity. So then you have an evening time for playing with toy and a morning time for learning. So this is again a category that we have created, which we are imposing on a child. One very important thing that we must keep in mind is that every activity a child does, if you don't interfere, is to do with cognition. It is trying to make sense of the world. There is no other activity the child is doing. And even drawing is nothing but a cognitive activity, provided you don't interfere. So drawing is the activity. It's actually a play that children do on two-dimensional surface, and it's also an activity to understand two-dimensional surface in terms of two-dimensional space. This is what the child is, this is what actually the real drawing that children do. So the real experience is the source for playful exploration and for playful drawing. So here, I will not have time to go very deeply into this, but we can look at some of the damages of schooling. Schooling means actually you have ready-made knowledge and you're teaching, and you have taken away unknown. So the existential nature of learning is denied. An existential crisis and alienation at a very subconscious level happens. Now this is unknown to you. This happens at a subconscious level. And this is probably the reason why we have not understood life and we are alienated from life itself, And what it does is that it reduces the totality of the world experience into simplified and distorted and compartmentalized subjects to be read and understood. So this is the reduction that you do to the real immense world. And probably this is the reason why we don't engage with the world with its, with wonder, with that immensity. We don't experience that, So denial of authenticity, experience of the body, fragmentation of the mind. This is what actually happens in that process, actually. Attention from the word to the word, which is codified, reduced, and edited. Even if it is a digital word, in fact, the digital impact is even worse, actually. And then from a creator of knowledge into analyzer of second-hand information. This is the gift of schooling to us. So we have actually misunderstood children, play and toy, knowledge creation as a process. What is the content of knowledge? We have completely misunderstood. And role of experience and role of language. So in short, we have created an anti-child, anti-life world. Our homes, we have redesigned in such a way that it is anti-child. Our attitudes, behavior, notions, teaching itself and toy, screen of all types, food, the kind of food that we are now providing children, schools, jobs, the very lifestyle. And this is the one very important thing that people have missed out, that single child is very bad for children. Children need at least 2-3 people around them, because adults playing with a child is absolutely not good at all, because children are at a different kind of beingness totally, and adults belong to a totally different paradigm. They do not have the innocence, the spontaneity of a child and the imagination of a child. Like, can you think of 2 combs becoming an aeroplane? It doesn't occur right now to an adult, because we have been so schooled. And so one very important thing, please understand one very important thing, there are no villains in this. And don't feel remorse at all about what is happening, because we are absolutely helpless. And we are also, all of us are victims of a certain condition. And so, which also means that we can do an inclusive inquiry, because there are no villains in this. Nobody is purposely doing anything to us. We have created a condition in the world in such a way that we have turned against life. All of us together. But what this condition gives is that it is time for us to wake up, to lead a very conscious and aware life, which means that every activity a child does, we become aware to that. Next time when you say no to a child, immediately you will realize, oh, I've said no. And you will reduce the telling of no. That's number one. Secondly, you will begin to take notice of whatever the child is doing. Next time, I'm sure when you look at a child bouncing on a sofa, I'm sure you won't say no to the child. So every activity a child is doing spontaneously is absolutely meaningful. And so I'm actually inviting you to take part in an existential research that we have, that some of us are doing together. Some of my friends are also in the, I've also invited them to this, to this talk. They're also present. And so this research is what I call as knowing by being. The research is not reading 1,000 books, which is what today the whole research means. It is about having authentic experience and reclaim our ability to know and to create knowledge. This is precisely what we should be aiming at, because this is what everybody can do. That is why. It's not something that only a highly educated person can do. Everyone is able to create knowledge. Now, simple example, let's take one simple example, which is that all of us have learned how to speak our mother tongue. There wasn't much support. And now, suppose you want to understand language. The only thing that you could do is to pay more and more attention to language. Now, pay attention to what is being spoken, how they are speaking, and why they are speaking. These three types of attentions would actually decode the very language itself. Because it is the how of language is the grammar of language. The language can be decoded by paying more and more. The way the child compared the feet, if we compare the way language is used in different contexts, we will be able to decode the grammar and various aspects. So, of course, this is not a must, because the most important thing is that we need to learn how to speak language. That's the most important thing. But now, having entered the realm of this nonsense called education, getting out of it would require for us to be absolutely clear that what is really knowledge, how do we create it. So this is a very important thing to understand. Now, one thing that I want to share is that because of this research that we have been doing, we have absolutely fresh PhD topics, and I think it is very important that many informal research is more important, but even formal research is required in order to decode some of these things which I told earlier, decode it, especially the damage that modern schooling is doing, because that is one area that is, that will be very, very dangerous for people to touch. People will be afraid to touch this, because the whole modern paradigm is based on how to teach. If you look at all the research that is happening in the Western world, because research is happening only in the Western world. Other non-Western world, there's no research at all. We are totally consuming whatever the West is doing. But the West has taken on a wrong path, because it assumes that children needs to be taught. It starts with deficiency. It assumes that nature has to be corrected, people has to be civilized, you need to develop them, you need to teach them. So all this paradigm is a deficiency paradigm, which takes for granted the other is not right and you need to start acting. Whereas the indigenous paradigm is that everything is perfect and we have to wake up to our own perfectness. So the schooling, we need to, so right now what we can do is how do we look at reducing the damages that schooling has done. That is very important. So we need to reimagine our homes, reimagine schools, and reimagine higher education. Now, let me just quickly share with you some of the online programs that we are right now doing. Right now we are planning to do reimagining art. It's an online course that starts on 24, 26, this is the days it will be. And the content will be, see, right now art is very scary like mathematics. it is being, only few people become artists and the rest are dropped out. So I want to reverse this process and make people understand that actually it is about awakening our aesthetic sense. It is awakening our sense of beauty. It need not be seen as an end product. It has to be seen more as a quality that all of us are endowed with, and because beauty is the nature of life itself. It's not something that you need to learn. So this is a course that are, so all my courses are process oriented, in which the learner themselves discovered from within. So that's the, and it is for anybody. So this is, I just wanted to mention that it is for anyone above 17 years who wants to revisit some of this, So the process is initiating inquiry, initiating process, addressing habits, because there are a lot of wrong habits and wrong notions that we have. So basically in the course, we will be challenging those habits and notions. And it also means that we need to awaken our senses consciously. And of course, that creativity process needs to be awakened. And this is for reclaiming the natural process. We are also planning workshops in Marathi, and we definitely want to extend this to other languages. And we are also looking at other collaborators who can come and join us and do courses in other other languages. We are definitely welcome to. But of course, we need to first of all undergo a deschooling yourself, because then only you will understand the spirit of what we are talking about. Because it's not mere transferring of language. So children's play is something that we are planning on 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and 25th of September. And then and on drawing on 5, 7, 9th of October. And this is the fees for that. And and we are also planning on the long-term cognitive importance of drawing, reimagining art, why children play, how children learn language, do nothing parenting, early childhood education, and learning to learn. This is a one-year program that we are planning, almost like a gap year kind of a program. Now that we are fully in gap, it's a good time. And I think, COVID situation, I think, is a fantastic time to really, relook at the way we have been living. It's giving us an opportunity to stay quietly, to reflect. And I think it is really important time for us to reclaim some of our deeper, abilities that has been damaged by the consumeristic world, capitalism, and the modern schooling. So this is our contact, ekfpune@gmail.com, and ekfoundation.in is our website. Please visit. And now I'll stop, and if you have any queries, we can do a little bit of.
I request everybody to type their questions in the chat box so that sir can answer them. There is one question, sir. What not to do while dealing with children? Some tips on that.
What to?
What not to do while dealing with children?
No, there are, see, I will give you my example. Please understand that none of these are instructional. Please understand this. So the answers will not be how to do. I will share what I have done, and before telling my story, I want to tell you story of Hoja. I'm sure you must have heard of Nasruddin Hoja. So once somebody had a problem with their eye, eye was paining. So he goes to Hoja and asks for ask Hoja that, can you suggest a good doctor, and he asks whether this doctor is good, so the Hoja says, no, I can't give you that kind of an answer, but I can tell you my experience. I had a teeth problem. I went to the doctor. That doctor removed my teeth. So now you take a decision. You have an eye problem, whether you want to go to the doctor. It's a simple thing. So similarly, don't take my experiences seriously. You have to decide from your experience. But anyway, my experience is that when a child came to my life, I took 3 decisions. Number one is that never say no to her. Second is that always follow her. Third is that never lie to her. Now, I'm sure all these three things are rampant in the modern parenting. That we have no problem telling lies to them. We are always telling the child no, 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 no. And in fact, there is a story that when a child was asked what is his name, the child told no John, because the parent was all the time telling no John, no John, no John, no John. So the child thought that is his name. So no is the rampant thing that is continuously happening, and cheating the child is always happening, because you are never allowing the child to take a decision. You will decide when the child should eat, when the child should sleep, everything that that you do to that's very tense. And of course, somebody has asked whether the courses are online. Yes, the courses are online till we have an opportunity to meet. Of course, we also we were always doing offline meetings, retreats and things with that, because all these are experiential. But I think that given the situation right now, we can still try and utilize it to again in a more non-instructional manner, more experiential manner. So we give more time, more more interaction, and so that is how the online courses are being planned. Yeah, it is basically to rediscover yourself, but we can confuse you like anything and create more and more confusions, so that you are more and more attentive to what is happening to you, so that you begin a journey of rediscovering what you have actually. So with the child, it is very important to understand that the child is far more creative and far more real, far more natural to us. So the child is actually there to help you out, and not if you don't teach them at all. So for a deschooler, and then there is a strange misconception that most modern people have about unschooling, which is actually a nonsensical word, because the child need not be unschooled. It is you who need to be unschooled. The child is perfect as they are. You can utilize that situation to unschool yourself. You are a schooled person. You can unschool or deschool or unlearn all the nonsense that has gone inside you, the knowledge that you carry, the notions, the attitudes, the behavior, everything that can be unschooled, provided you can learn that from a child by being very sensitively engaging with the child. So that is what it is, because whole lot of modern parents are going around talking about we are unschooling our children. This is absolute nonsense, because you have not understood what this whole thing is all about,
Another question, sir. How do we ask the children to reduce the time spent on the devices?
That's a how question again, but I can give you, but you stop reducing, they will naturally reduce. You see, we have to reorganize our spaces. You see, one hypocrisy of modernity is that we are all the time thinking that we are doing everything for the child, but this is 100% wrong. Every new contraption that we create for a child is only for the convenience of the adult. Not one thing is created for the child, but we are so hypocritical that we don't accept that we are so damn selfish. We want to pretend that we are very good for children. This is not true at all. Starting from the nappy that we give children, everything we do is for our convenience. And what I would say is that before you do anything to a child, experience it yourself. For 2-3 days, you wear a nappy and see how it feels. And then, of course, if you feel fantastic, give it to a child. You see, what should the child learn? What is the child learning when you give a nappy to a child? Please imagine that this is to be carried all the whole day. It is absolute insensitivity being bred into the society by all these contraptions. Actually, the moment I remember that, when a mother is sleeping, the moment the child makes a small sound, immediately mother wakes up. But that was because of a certain connection that the mother used to have with the child. That is sensitivity. The moment you have a contraption like this, you will never wake up. Otherwise, when a child is peeing, that wetness makes the child wake up, and it cries. It's actually it's a lessons of sensitivity that you're learning. Please understand this. That is why the modern people are so fragile, so selfish. That is why we don't look after our old mothers, old parents, because we become so insensitive. And mind you, what are you teaching your child? To be extremely insensitive. Because you can see from your grandmother to your mother to you and your child, it's actually complete decline in terms of quality of being. In terms of knowledge, in terms of your sensitivity, in terms of your intelligence. The only thing that we have acquired is that we know how to read and write. And we think that this is what knowledge is all about. At no other, thing we are better than anybody else. The so-called illiterate or our parents or grandparents, they are far, far better off.
Another question.
Any more beatings? Any more beatings? People want? Ask another question.
Yeah, there's one question. How does one structure oneself to ensure that all the students of the class are engaged in exploration and self-discovery?
School is a dangerous place, we have to really reimagine, I mean, school, of course, the teachers are totally the victims of, the hierarchy, if you see, it's very interesting, that the lowest is a child, then is the teacher, and above them there are more and more people piled up, so the teacher is all a completely helpless being, so one has to, first of all, one has to understand that stop pretending that you are a guru. This is the first important thing you should do. We are actually nothing. We are only doing our job. That's all. Don't pretend that we have gurus and we have lots of knowledge that we need to give to a child. We are doing it because we need to earn our living. So every time you go to a school, please understand this. Don't pretend to be a guru. Treat the child respect the child as a total being. And within your constraint, try to do what is possible. See, we ran a school. Me and my friend Ranjana is also there in this presentation. We ran a school from 2011 to 2014. But we took over the school completely and we called it Reimagining Schools. So we respected children's right 100%. There was no teaching. Children, did whatever they felt like. They did drawing, they did making of things, and what we did was that we documented everything that the children were doing. We have more than 4,000 videos on children, and every evening all of us would sit together and watch these videos, and from that we were able to understand that there is meaning in every activity a child is doing. So our understanding of this actually came from observing children. So if you say you are with children, it's the best opportunity for you to, learn what the child is all about. Even the damage that we are doing, either way we can learn. Anyway, school is a damage. Look at what happens to a child when the child comes to a school. Each day, how does its energy is sapped out? How does it creativity, its enthusiasm, everything gets killed by the time they reach 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see the difference. Provided, of course, we need to be sensitive. If we are dead from inside, we see nothing. The problem is that we are dead from inside. We are no longer alive to understand the pain of what others are going through. Because we don't value freedom. We don't mind becoming a mechanical being. We don't mind becoming a slave. That's what we have become. Absolute slave to modern context. And we are celebrating it because we get some salary with that. We have sold our souls. We don't have a problem. So this process is that we need to be extremely courageous to face our inner calling. Basically, there is a doubt that keeps happening from inside. There is a calling that is coming from inside every day. And if you respond to that, then slowly, that calling will become more and more stronger and it will not let you rest. But if you deny that calling, it will slowly die out and you know, so this is what it is. It is actually every time there is a inside something is giving you a warning. No, you are not living, you're not being authentic, you're not being you. The question is that, are you being yourself, or are you living, you know, to the tune of others' demands? Are you living for others, or are you living for your inner calling? That's what it is actually.
Is it okay if we take one last question, sir?
Yeah. Any number of questions. I'm not angry.
Okay. Any tips on dealing with teens?
Oh, teens. Teens means so much of damage you have already done, and now you want to fight them. It's very difficult actually. You know, today what is happening is that ignorance and arrogance are working out together very well. You know, you see, what is the myth that modernity has promoted? The youngsters are very capable. No, that's what they are promoting now. They are very advanced. They very what are they actually? They know how to handle a mobile phone. More than that, what do they know? They can make a website. What else do they know? In the real world, real experience, what is there? But the tragedy is that it's like the educated. See, I asked the question, what is the color of sky? I'm sure most of the educated were absolutely confident it is blue. Am I right? Color of sky is blue. So this confidence even educated had. Now the digitally trained have more confidence because they don't even need anybody to, any adults to give them this information. They can access it, So the difference is only that we actually had to depend on a teacher, and we were also actually as arrogant to our non-literate parents or parents. See, the generation gap, this is what generation gap is all about. Generation gap actually means it's actually cognition gap. In a rural area where people have been living in the same context, there was no question of generation gap. The idea of generation gap first came about when printing, reading and schooling was introduced, and that generation had a different worldview. They read books and they had a different worldview. Now, the digitally trained people have a different worldview. And of course, I have not really deeply delved into the fundamental damages of, how the language, the reading rewires your brain, and how the digital rewires your brain. It's actually very, very dangerous game that we are playing, because we have not understood that how the context is shaping us. You see, I have actually looked at how the life of feral children. Feral children are children brought up by animals. So I have looked at the case of 3 children. One is a child brought up by dogs. So the child was actually behaving exactly like a dog. The child didn't know how to walk even. The child was walking like a dog, barking like a dog, eating like a dog. Another case is of a child in a chicken coop, and the child was actually, both the hand had become like a punk, the lips had become like beak, and the child was behaving like a hen. And another case was of a monkey. It was behaving like a monkey, which actually means that we absorb what we engage with and we become that. So when you read a book, whatever cognitive structure you have taken is of a book. Your linear mind, your fragmented mind, your compartment mind, everything is the way the book is organized. You become that. So a digital appliance is also miniaturized. It is edited. It is, why there is far more fake news today? It's possible. Now, that is secondary. But the impact on your cognitive development, your being development is far more dangerous, because it is distorting your senses. What you're seeing is inside, your whole world is being seen in this this one. And it's even smaller than a book. It is in the mobile that you're seeing the world. So I used to do this small experiment with people that I asked them to, educated people, of course, I asked them to imagine the earth. You know, you can do this. You can imagine the earth. For most educated people, two types of imagination happens. One is imagination of a picture of Neil Armstrong shot the earth from the moon. So for many people, it is that photograph that comes to their mind, or for the other people, for the rest of them, it will be the globe, a small globe that comes to their hand. You know, so when we imagine the earth, it is this globe like. So why have you reduced this immensity which can't even enter into your mind? How have you reduced it? Now for a mobile fed person, that imagination would be even smaller, because there you see only a tiny dot. You know, that's the earth. So this is, it is actually completely rewiring your brain, but I don't think people will understand it. It will take another probably thousands of years to understand what we have lost with all our inventions, because what is happening is that the inventions now has taken over, and you are victim of those inventions. You are no longer in control of your senses, your experiences. Your experiences are controlled by the tool. Because see, how have you fragmented playing, learning, toy, work, art? Why have you done that? That's because that is how you have been trained by the book, both in terms of content. Two types of content. Book itself has a content, and the content that is written in the book. Book itself is a content, actually. Our first content is the book itself. Irrespective of what you read, whether you read Bible, Gita, Quran, anything that you read, science, there is a way that the book wires your brain. So the reading itself as an act changes the way you engage with things. Similarly, the digital is completely changing you. So what you see, the behavior of modern teenage life is this confidence and everything comes from their access to information, and it's actually all these things needs to be looked at in a more collective way. Individually, we can have small solutions, but it's actually a large scale consciousness problem. Actually, it needs to be looked at much more delicately, much more, probably more, if I use the word, could be more spiritually, which I mean is that more a deep way. It's not a political, it's not a individual way of doing it, but in a much more deeper manner we need to engage, and I don't know whether there are any solutions like that.
I would like to call our founder, Ms. Nayantara Nandakumar, to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Jinan, for reminding us about the large scale, really a lack of consciousness that we are all a part of. And also I love the stories that you told of No John and Nasruddin Hoja. They really are such a wake-up call to each of us. Every time I hear you talk, I see a shift in my own life and dealing with children. As we respect their processes, as we respect their games, not as just meaningless, a waste of time, but as deep ways of understanding the world and learning. So I look forward to attend your workshops. I'm so happy that they are available online and we can actually access them and have, I hope, much more time with you rather than just the few times that you are able to be here in Hyderabad. Thank you so much for being on Tuning In, and we will definitely be sharing all the information about your workshops. For me, it has been life-changing. Your work has resonated deeply and has actually, things that I knew but hadn't quite put into words. You have studied and explained to us. So I'm looking forward to the rest of your workshops, and thank you for tuning in today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the session. Good night. Stay safe.